Hello, I'm Matthew Wilkinson, historian with Heritage Mississauga, and today we're going to look at the colors of the 2nd York Militia, a War of 1812 reenactment company also known as Thompson's Company. To give you a little background in terms of how the colors for the 2nd York were created, the inspiration came from the colors of the 3rd York, which was another militia during the War of 1812 that was centered on what is today the city of Toronto. Of all the York, there were three regiments of York Militia, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, during the War of 1812. Only the 3rd York Militia received colors, and they were unofficial colors presented by the Ladies' Auxiliary of the Church of England in Toronto, and they were presented in 1813, and likely never saw use or saw the field of action due to the capture of York in 1813. So they were presented as colors, but again, likely never used. The flag over time went from private collections into the Church of England itself, or the Anglican Church, and eventually to the City of Toronto's museum services, where restoration efforts were undertaken in order to preserve what was left of the flag, which was deteriorating at that time. Only fragments of the flag survive, and they used dye degradation analysis to come up with what they believe were the original colors of the flag. This is a reproduction that was shared with us from the City of Toronto's museum services of the flag, the kind of the open green spaces in the flag were the missing pieces. So you can see that the flag was not nearly intact. And when you do kind of a black and white scan of that, you can see where just the stark white is the portions of the flag that were missing. So again, missing pieces of the flag, it's believed that pieces were cut off the flag as souvenirs. The bottom and left and bottom right fields were cut and removed completely. So originally there was believed that there was probably some imagery there at one point, but those have been removed. And so not the entirety of the design of the 3rd York flag was known. But from the analysis of it and through graphic recreation, we were able to determine, again, through the City of Toronto's museum services, the symbolism that appeared on the flag itself. Things like the royal cipher, the Great Seal of Upper Canada, the laurel wreath and motto, and the White Rose of York. At the time, of course, Toronto was known as York, and so we were able to graphically reproduce the imagery based on the designs that survived on the flags themselves. And with that, we were able to graphically reproduce, based on the color analysis of the flag as it likely appeared when it was presented. We had an opportunity to produce 2 flags through silk screening in partnership with the print gurus, and 2 flags were produced as recreations of the 3rd York flag. One was presented to Richard Gerard at the Museum Services of the City of Toronto, and a second flag was given to the York Regional Police Museum. York Regional Police Museum takes its motto from the 3rd York Regiment from the War of 1812, which is "Deeds Speak." So again, that process was more of kind of a fun recreation to see if it's something we could actually produce. That inspired us to see if our own reenactment company might develop colors of their own. And so in creating our own, we started with the understanding and complete honesty that the 2nd York, that was the historic regiment that was based out of historic Mississauga, then known as Toronto Township, and adjacent Trafalgar Township, modern Oakville. And we know that the 2nd York never had a flag, and so the process of creating a 3rd York flag led us to an idea that perhaps creating a flag of our own for the modern reenactment company. But we wanted to be rooted and anchored in the history of our communities, and trying to follow as best practice as we could the common practices for military colors from the War of 1812. And again, inspiration for the development of our flag, after a great deal of research and consultation, taken from historic Mississauga and historic Trafalgar townships. So, looking at the symbols to consider for our flag, the royal cipher as a symbol very common within regimental flags at the time. We were part of Upper Canada. The seal of Upper Canada appeared on the Third York flag. We thought that was a representation that should continue into the Second York flag. And then looking at the historic Mississauga, then known as Toronto Township, and our historic logo and motto from Toronto Township, and also the symbolism from the Trafalgar Township crest, Oakville's crest being the oak tree. And so these are symbols to consider. The royal cipher that was chosen was taken from an archaeological find from the War of 1812 in the Toronto area, trying to reference again these designs that might have been prevalent at the time. Looking at the colors to consider for the flag itself, blue and white were the historic colors of Toronto Township, that is historic Mississauga. Green and white were the historic colors of Trafalgar Township. And so understanding that those would be principal colors for us to draw on, largely again because the uniforms of the Second York were green coatees fringed with white and red with blue pants. That was the uniform of the Upper Canada Militia prior to 1813, and so we thought those colors would be important to connect back to the flag itself. Red was a traditional color used in British forces and in heraldry. White, again, a component of design, but never to be used as a base color or field color. Gold is a traditionally accepted color, but not as a field color. Green on blue, not generally accepted, whereas blue on green is. And also British regimental flags often included the Royal Union Standard in the upper left canton with a symbol of allegiance in the fly. And that was something that was absent from the Third York flag, the Royal Union Standard in the upper left corner. But we felt, given that we were creating a flag that never existed, that it was important to show that this represented a unit that was allied to the British Crown at the time, or at least from the reenactment perspective. So we had a number of levels of consultation and review, of just input. This was a fun project, but we also wanted to be as historically accurate as we possibly could. Again, bearing in mind we're creating a symbol of something that never actually existed. But we had consultations with Richard Gerard, the historian with the Museum Services in the City of Toronto, fantastic resource of information and guidance. Claire Boudreau, Chief Herald of the Canadian Heraldic Authority through Rideau Hall. Ended up being quite some fun conversations around the symbolism of the time. Kevin Hebib from Old Fort York, Peter Twist, Crown Forces of 1812, all had input as well. The project was led largely by myself and Jamie Gaspar from Heritage Mississauga, and also our board of director, but also educator and captain of the Second York, Greg Carraro. And also we had input from the York Regional Police Historian and Museum as part of the design for this flag. So lots of hands involved, and it ended up being, again, quite a fun and fascinating process in terms of creating symbolism for the flag. So the final product of the flag itself, a green verge with a blue field, again representing the historic colors of Toronto Township and Trafalgar Township. Royal cipher in the middle with a laurel leaf taken again from a officer's gorget from War of 1812 and the symbolism therein. The Royal Union Standard in the upper left canton, the Great Seal of Upper Canada in the upper right, and then in the bottom corners, taking the inspiration that the Third York flag likely had imagery in the bottom corners that had been cut away over time as souvenirs, that we took the inspiration of including some symbols in the bottom left and bottom right. These being the scales of justice from Toronto Township historic coat of arms and a stylized oak tree from the Trafalgar Township historic crest. And the motto itself is taken from historic Mississauga's or Toronto Township's motto. Graphic design and printing, our summer student in 2013, Mike Tran, designed the flag graphically, and we printed through partnership with Philip Berry at the Print Gurus. 3 flags were produced. 2 we have in stock at Heritage Mississauga that were brought out for events, and 1 flag was given to the York Regional Police Museum. The flag was unveiled at Doors Open at 2013 at Dixie Union Cemetery during a plaque unveiling ceremony to War of 1812 veterans. The motto I referenced earlier is Fiat Justicea, which is taken from the Toronto Township Historic Coat of Arms. It was in use by 1841, but likely dates to even earlier than that. And Fiat Justicea translates roughly to "let justice be done," and of course, the symbolism was the scales of justice at the time. And that is a brief explanation of how the colors of the Second York came to be. A fascinating process, and if you see the Second York reenactment group out in the community, you will see the colors on the fly, and know that although they did not exist during the War of 1812, they do represent many different aspects of not only military history and War of 1812 era history, but also the early connections to historic Mississauga and historic Oakville, namely Toronto Township and Trafalgar Township. So thank you very much, and hope to see you out there at some point in the near future at a reenactment near you. Thank you.